Bombshell Brunches, where your hosts Raquelle Rodenberg and Kristina Lau sip and spill with badass babes every Tuesday morning. Hello.
Welcome to our brunch break. All of the brunch breaks that we have in our minds are really like, yeah, we're doing great and things are awesome. Raquel and I both just got on this call and I was like, I'm having a day. And she was like, I'm having a day. So welcome to those days.
Yeah, our days. There was a reason I put that post up today.
Which, to be fair, I didn't even read properly. I skimmed it because I was like, I can't cope with anything. So I'm just going to be like, oh yeah, nice. Like my friend wrote to me and she was like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And I literally was like, hello, yes, no, can't, bye-bye. We're not doing great today, are we, babes?
Oh, it's definitely been a day. I don't know. It's been a day. I've just been very emotional today. I wasn't so much like mad or anything like that, but I've just been very emotional, which I'm not very emotional. I'm not a very emotional person, so it's always interesting when that happens.
You're like, oh, feelings? Oh,
yeah. What do I do with these? What are these things leaking out of my eyes? What is
my
this?
eyes are leaking. I spent 90 minutes on the phone with FedEx today.
Oh.
Just trying to get my delivery, and nobody had the answer by the end of it. I was hung up on by way
Was
of.
it from another country? Because
yeah,
I'm just
it's from the States.
Okay, so I will say shipping from the States right now everywhere sucks.
Oh, it arrived. They just never it's in Burnaby. They just never delivered it and said they did, and now it's in holding. And it's one of those things where we've had the last 4 episodes, we've kind of spoken about, we kind of group them into themes, don't we? We kind of talk about with the last few that have been recorded have been amazing. And we're talking about systems and processes and ways to kind of thrive through high pressure situations. And, you know, all you babes out there, I don't know about you all, but fuck, sometimes you just get to a point where you're like, I can't. I have all the systems and tools and support systems and love, and it's just a shitty day.
Shitty days are okay. Shitty days are necessary because then you have something to compare for the good days.
Yeah, you know what, I was talking to my career coach today, Larry, and we like to have these check-ins where we talk about, you know, how far we've come and how far we've kind of moved along in terms of a lot of my emotional side of things, because I am very emotional and I wear my heart really close to my sleeve. But we were talking about it and I was like, you know what's getting harder is as you get more responsibility, as you get these kind of bigger wins, you know, you launch these bigger projects. I don't think I've been as prepared, and I don't think it's possible to be prepared for the amount of subconscious pressure that then equates to. So to give you an example, I'm so happy with the auditions that I'm getting because they're huge. They're like, you know, between 5 and 10 pages due the next day. And that's a joy. Like, I am so happy that I have those opportunities, but I am also subconsciously like, that's a huge step in terms of pressure. So then when something small like a FedEx delivery comes in, I'm not prepared. Like, I'm not prepared for that wrench in my day. Whereas before, I think when I was, you know, still grinding in different ways, I had different coping mechanisms.
Well, you had more space. You had more space to breathe. You had maybe more space for self-care.
I don't know that I did.
No?
Did you, when we first met, did you have space for that? I feel like my problems were just
Absolutely, I made space
different.
for it.
I did not. I don't feel like I did. I just felt like my problems were kind of more easily solved. Whereas
Hmm.
now I'm like, if I'm behind, I'm letting down a lot more people and things, you know?
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because I'm in the opposite position. So I I've also everything's leveled up and there's big moves being made, and I was actually just thinking today, and this was part of why I was really emotional today. I keep talking about my move, and right now, I mean, on the shorter end, my move is going to be a year. And that's never been something that's very dramatic for me. I'm like, that's
Mm,
fine. I don't mind leaving for a year. I'm not, that's okay. The time isn't really an issue. But there's a big symbolic piece with me leaving. And part of
right.
that is this has been a goal I've worked on for many, many years, like close to 10 years. It's been something that I've wanted and I've just chipped away at, chipped away at. I think in a lot of ways, it's something that I didn't actually think was going to happen. And
Interesting.
yeah, and for a long time, I was chipping away at it, and I was doing all the right things for it, but I could have applied sooner. There's always that doubt, that voice of doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And over the last like couple years, I would say, the last 2 or 3 years, it's been a lot of showing up and proving to myself that I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just that's how things were happening. And so each time that I kept being successful, it was proving that voice of doubt wrong. And
Right.
and so each time that happened, when I would fail at something or whatever, I mean, I hate the word fail, but sure, fail at something, um, then it just became less of an issue. I was like, well, I know I have this because
Mm.
I've done this and this and this, and I can prove that to myself. So no longer am I actually pairing my self worth to me passing or failing on this because I know I have it. And so
Yeah.
a big part of this move was emotional or is emotional to me right now. I'm realizing because I feel like I'm saying goodbye to myself that was really doubting.
Oh, well, yeah, you're saying goodbye to an iteration.
Right? I really do. I feel like there's a metamorphosis, and I feel
Mm.
like there was a big part of me that doubted a lot. And I feel like that is, it's transitioning away. And so it's
It's
just,
so
yeah,
it's just
I don't know. I think it's just going to transition out. I can feel it already transitioning out. So, in that sense, um, I'm being a lot kinder to myself. In so many ways, I'm loving my body more than I ever have. I'm kinder to myself when I don't do well at something, or in my mind, I don't do well at something. Someone else
you.
still might be like, yeah, that was great. You still did great. And in my mind, I'm like, no, I didn't. Doesn't mean I don't have those moments where I'm like, that really sucked.
Mm.
But they're lasting a lot shorter. And
And
I'm
you're
not
quite
drilling in
receptive
myself.
to that conversation. I
Yeah.
mean, at the beginning of launching Bombshell Brunches, the podcast,
Hmm.
it was like, there were certain things that you had such a specific vision. And I think that that's a great thing. I think that's why you and I work really well together, because I don't have that vision. I'm a prepare and then let it go kind of person. Uh, but yeah, I've seen that change. I've seen that change, and I wonder, just going back to that piece of metamorphosis, and it's wrapped up pretty nicely for our listeners, and the ones who have followed along this journey thus far and listened to all the episodes. We've really selected our guests to help us move through our own transitions into different levels of career and life. And I think that's been really interesting. I think it's been really interesting to watch, the pieces of information that we've taken, the pieces that have kind of stuck with us. I mean, gosh, we both, had Sarah Briggs on from Let That Shit Go. And I got rid of so much stuff. I just needed those little reminders. I needed that hour of talk in my day to be given permission to fail, to let it go. Tam talking about going into winter and sads and feeling, kind of crushed by this invisible virus that is weighing on the world and on our souls and obviously our bodies. All these steps that we're taking is leading to that metamorphosis. And I think today you're in a much better place than I am about taking those points. But I mean, I think that's a pretty good segue into talking about what the main points are that we've learned over the last month. I really think the support system thing is just, it's surrounding me right now, because let's be honest, I don't know what the numbers are where you all are, but it's dark here. And we're in a pretty good place. We have a lot of cases of COVID. We have a lot of conspiracy theorists. We have a lot of people who are protesting wearing masks. We have a lot of division, politically, socially. It's heavy.
Yeah.
But we've also got a lot of pivoting. We have a lot of people who are like, hey, this norm is just not real anymore. And that's okay.
Ish.
I mean, it is. Yeah, it's okay-ish. It's,
Yeah.
we're looking at systems.
I think there's a lot of. I have some friends in the medical field, and I talk to them a lot about this because I come from the communications field. And so there's always a lot of interest and back and forth. And actually, the master's that I'm pursuing is heavily weighing in health communications. So it's definitely an interest area for me in that sense. And I just think the guidelines are very confusing to a lot of people. I also think there's a lot of people who assume everyone's listening to the updates.
Yeah.
Listening as in actually hearing it, not listening as in following the guidelines. But I mean, a lot of people may not even be hearing them.
Yeah.
And there has to be a certain level of logic, honestly, whether it's real or not, so that people can follow the line, because they can't put out every single possible situation for you and say, this is what you do in this situation, this is what you do in that. So you need to give people a structure, a logic structure that they can follow. And I think right now, this lockdown especially is really difficult. When we talked to Tam, one thing that really hit home for me was when she was talking about how it's easy for it to not feel real when you don't know someone who's been affected by it. At this point, I've known quite a number of people, quite a number of my close friends and family have gotten COVID. So that's really hit home for me. And then I look at the guidelines and they're just odd. It's like you can't, at least here in BC right now, you can't see people who are outside of your household, unless of course you're in a relationship with someone, or kids who are visiting their parents or maybe living in two homes. So that's allowed, which is totally, that makes sense. That's a big mental health piece. And if you're living alone, you're allowed one or two very close friends that you can, that makes sense. But then you're really, other than that, not supposed to be outside of your household. You're not even really supposed to have your bubble of 6 or anything anymore.
Not here, no.
But then gyms are open, and all of these social things are open, and restaurants are open, and I get it. There's the economy piece, there's people's livelihoods, and I think it's great that we're doing that. I'm just thinking it's difficult to follow the logic. And then people who are affected by COVID with their family members getting sick and so on are really angry because they're saying, hey, this kind of action is what's leading to our family members and friends getting sick and possibly dying. And on the other hand, can you really blame them? Because where's the thread of logic that they can follow throughout?
And where's the immediate threat to those people?
Where's the immediate threat? Yeah.
This is the issue that I have with the name. of human nature sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, oh, we're such shits, you know, because I'm, you know, we're generally speaking, and I mean, I shouldn't generalize, and I also shouldn't say the word should, but generalizing, we respond to punitive measures. If there's not a threat, we respond to fear. And, you know, I was listening to John Oliver the other day. Fear's not a bad thing. There's a book called, oh gosh, what is it? The Love of Fear or something. And it talks about why it is actually a healthy thing to feel fear. But I think sometimes there's a point where it's taken too far, and fear overpowers social responsibility, which is unfortunate, because if there's not that immediate fear for your own life and safety, or a real fear of about your family, then why change? You know, and the greater piece that I hope that people do look at is, because it's really not that difficult to put on the mask, to wash the hands, to be socially distanced, just in case. But that doesn't strike a lot of people in the same way. And
well, there's a dissonance. I totally agree with you. And I was talking to someone about this recently as well, where they said it so much better than I'm going to say it, but I'm going to try. I'll try to do it justice. But they said it's very hard to imagine that you stepped into the elevator, you didn't have a mask on, you felt totally fine, you went up to your unit, and that action killed somebody. You never met that somebody, maybe, right? You didn't see what happened to them or their family members. You have no connection, but that could have been you.
And the naysayers are going to be like, yeah, but that's not going to happen, and you'll never prove it. And that's the problem, is that, you will never prove it. You
won't know if it was you.
You won't know. I mean, that.
Potentially, maybe you get sick or they trace it or whatever, but potentially you may never know.
Yeah.
And is it worth that potential?
I think this is where I really come from a luxurious position of having grown up in a hive mind city. And I reference that quite a lot, having been brought up in my formative years in Hong Kong. There are 8 million people on a tiny, tiny island that fits into Canada over 9,000 times. I actually Googled it once.
I didn't know that.
I Googled it. England fits into Canada 60 times, just FYI. I think 60 something, but yeah. And there's 8 million people on this tiny island. So when SARS hit, it was potentially a spark in a primed forest to get set on fire, you know. And the Hong Kong government within days had hand sanitizer, had all of these things. Now, I have to give credit to the Hong Kong government and the Hong Kong people. I have endless pride for my hometown, because everybody put on a mask. I don't recall someone turning around and being like, no, that's ridiculous, I want my freedoms. I recall people making sure that other people were also following in a kind way and just being like, you're gonna put your mask on. And just like, you know, 2-3 years later, when I was back, I was inadvertently eating on the MTR, which is the underground, and someone looked at me and they just pointed at my thing and they were like, no, you can't eat here, and pointed at the sign. And I was like, you know what? No one's eating. Everyone's orderly. And we have this hive mind of like, collectively speaking, we can't afford to be irresponsible or even to not conform. If I'm really honest, we can't afford to not do that, because even though it's a government and a lot of people are like, yeah, you know, I don't need to listen to anybody, I don't have to respond to that. It's like, no, this is a health thing. As soon as it's a health thing, it shouldn't matter if your government is saying it and you're anti-government. You should just do the health thing, because otherwise it will spread to everyone. That's just way too small a space. But I have that context. And I remember seeing at the start of COVID, a lot of people in BC, a lot of people I knew saying, well, I don't really need to wear that mask. That nobody's really forcing me to make that decision right now. So I'm not going to unless I absolutely have to. And I just wonder when we're going to get to a point where we don't have to be regulated so strictly that that punitive measures are introduced before everybody goes, yeah, that's actually probably a logical thing to do. Let's just do it. I don't understand why the mental real estate is being taken up debating whether or not to wear a mask.
Sorry. Snoopy.
Oh, Snoopy's here.
Snoopy's here. They normally go to daycare, but I couldn't get them to daycare in time today.
Well, and I was late to the party as well because I was on the phone with FedEx, so it's my fault.
We have extra guests today.
That's okay. We have
He just wanted
extra.
to chime in with his part, his point of view. Yeah, and I mean, the kind part of me wants to really think about the fact of the mental health aspect, of the fact that this is now coming up to a year that we've been dealing with this, and people being maybe tired. BC was having really good numbers, so maybe some people disbelieving that it would ever become an issue here, because we did take really good care of in the beginning, and maybe that just created this false sense of safety. But I think it's pretty clear now. I think it's pretty clear that it's time to buck up, wear your mask, put on a dabble of hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
I think there are easy precautions to take.
And you know, it's very easy for you and I to kind of sit here in our lovely places and our lovely homes and talk about it, but it is hard. I would suggest to any of our listeners who haven't listened to the TAM episode, I mean, I think I've listened to it 3 times now. I think it's such a great episode to listen to. And I think going through all of the episodes that we've kind of put on to date, I think one of the really big things that we've inadvertently kind of strived to do is to create some frameworks, to create some things that we can do that are kind of in the semblance of our control, if that makes sense. You know? And so, you know, we're going through a lot of really big change. We're going through a lot of not being able to plan. But one of the things that I loved over the last few weeks is having conversations with people who are continuing to pivot and continuing to share their knowledge in terms of building frameworks. Like, I'm going to segue for a second and talk about the Mo Money podcast and the Bougie Budgeter podcast that we've just put out. And you and I both had goosebump moments for those 2 podcasts. And babes, we're talking about frameworks that you can set up really easily now. And those things are really helpful when you're having these days of, you know, feeling like shit and trying to get yourself in order. Once you've decluttered your life, I mean, there's me and this blank wall now, and I've got so many fewer things. Once you've kind of listened to that Declutter Your Life episode and you're feeling kind of good, I think the next logical step is to go, okay, how do I get the things that I can in order? And you don't have to have a ton of money to do it. You just start kind of getting joyous about the concepts.
Yeah, and I think, okay, so for me, the last number of episodes, there's been a thread, there's been a theme throughout all of them, and I think for me that's family, friends, and finances. As far as support systems.
Yes, great.
Family and those have been really bouncing around in my head. So I don't know. Do you want to? Some people don't have family as their support system, so they might have to rely more on friends or the family that they choose. But I still think that there's that realm, and I know you and I both have we're very close to our family. Yeah, I
I
don't know.
love, you
You
know what
look
I
like you're
love?
ready to jump in on
I'm
something.
so
So,
ready. I love that so much. I think what's really interesting in all of the knowledge that we've kind of received, uh, I want to just turn around and pose this question to all of you out there. You know, if you don't have a close relationship with your family, then you can put friends into that family group, your closest friends into that family group. Because I do know a lot of people who they treat certain members of their friendship group as if they were family. But it's a really interesting thing to maybe audit. And
mm-hmm.
maybe that's something that I need to do myself today, because I'm feeling overwhelmed, because I'm feeling like it's really dark outside and inside, inside. But I'm feeling like I'm not dealing well with life. I need to take a step back and think about my family, and have I been in touch, and
Mm-hmm.
have I done something to reinforce that support pillar? And then with my friends, am I, actually one thing I felt today was, am I giving too much time to my friends actually, instead of that time I need for myself?
Mm-hmm.
It can be one way or the other. With friends are amazing, but I am one of those people that likes to please everybody. And sometimes I go out of my way to help my friends and acquaintances at my own expense.
Yes.
And so figuring out where I'm at and reinforcing the pillar, whichever way it needs to be reinforced. And then finances. I don't know about you, but if I'm not in a financially reasonably healthy place, it's so easy for it to become this really vicious, slippery slope. And
Mm-hmm.
then I avoid it. And I think, taking that time to audit for a minute and go, oh, how am I with my family and my friends and my finances? And how do I take one step to feel a little better?
Well,
I'd add
that's
feelings
it.
on the end of it too. What are my
Yeah,
feelings about those three things?
it's the psychology, I think, around all of it. And I've been in the same position recently because, especially with me leaving, a lot of people want to see me, or I want to see a lot of
Mm,
people before I go. And I quite honestly don't have the time. Had it been a month ago, I
yeah.
could have made that time. But now it's like 2 weeks before I go. We're on a lockdown.
Yeah, that's a big
I'm
one.
gonna be staying with my grandparents right before I go, so I have to
Yeah.
be very, very safe.
Yeah.
But then you do feel that level of guilt where you're like, well, I should be seeing these people. And then literally it's at the expense of something because we're so busy. So that would mean not studying or
Mm-hmm.
taking a day off work or not seeing my boyfriend before we both leave or not seeing my mom on her birthday. Like it would be at the expense of something important as well.
Yeah, and just to be clear, because your boyfriend is moving to a different country
Yes. Yeah.
and
Because
you're
we're not going
moving
to be
to,
together.
yeah, you're not moving to the same place. That's a whole other emotional weight.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
But I think there's something in Donna's episode that I've also been ruminating on. And we were talking about fierce friendships
Mm,
and knowing when to let certain friendships go, knowing
mm-hmm.
when to hold on to them. And I kind of expanded that. I was thinking about it today, actually. And I don't know about you, but I have a number of friendships where we maybe drifted apart, not because of anything happening. It's just your lifestyles changed. Maybe I stayed here and hustled and worked and other people went traveling, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm about to travel and other people are staying, or people had kids and we just our lifestyles are different. So we don't
Mm-hmm.
see each other anymore. But they still hold such a place of love
Yeah.
for you. And even if you guys don't check in, like you're really good at checking in with people. I'm not good with checking in with people. They may be on my heart and in my mind, but I'm terrible at checking in. So that's something that recently I've noticed in the last few months. I've been trying to just check in, and actually starting Bombshells was a big start of that. And
Mm.
part of it is because I've got our community on my mind all the time. And part of that is because people I don't necessarily get to talk to anymore all the time are listening in to Bombshells. And so I might get like a
Yeah.
note from them where they're like, oh, great podcast or whatever. And
Yeah.
I glow. I'm like, you're listening? I feel like
And
I'm
there's a shared
connected to you.
purpose. You're listening and you're
Yes.
gaining at the same time. You're sharing and
Yes.
gaining.
It's beautiful. So that's
Mm.
been a big thing for me recently. It's just if I see, because I still get ecstatic when I see someone winning who's touched me in my life for whatever reason.
Mm.
You know, I get that like excitement even if I don't see them.
Yeah.
And it still warms my heart when I see that they're doing well. And so I've just been trying to like, even if it's just a DM, I just slide into the DMs. I throw them a little like, hey, that's
Yeah.
so amazing. Thinking of you. Hope you're well.
Okay. But this is a really great point because I go too far. I think of people and then I go, I was just thinking about you. And then they start a conversation with me and I'm like, I don't have time. I just wanted to say that I was thinking about you. The end. And I was on tour a couple of years ago and I actually caught up with three of my girlfriends on tour that we developed just the most wonderful friendship in the face of the most extraordinary adversity, which is I've got to bring them on to have a conversation about what we went through on that tour. I call it the disaster tour.
No.
It was that bad, but it made us so strong. And one of my girlfriends had amazing good news, and so we all hopped on a call. And they know because they've known me at my absolute can't cope with anything lowest version of myself, like literally cannot cope with the show, just what was going to happen. And I used to always say to them like, oh, you know, we're going to do this and blah, blah, blah. And you guys are really great. Okay, I'm leaving. Bye. And I would just say what I needed to say and leave the room. And they'd be like,
just
well,
walk
I
out.
guess we're not having any more of a conversation. That's the end now. She's left.
Literally left the building.
Literally left the building. And I just didn't have the capacity. But what happens is I am good at checking in. With the exception of my family. I want to check in more with them, but I feel like because they're the closest to me, I kind of take that for granted. And my older sister is the best at it. Like every day she sends me something, every single day. She's my guardian angel. And I'm terrible at it. But the people that I do want to check in, I'm like, oh, I'm thinking of you, but that's it. Goodbye. Because
I don't
otherwise,
want to talk to you.
I don't want to talk to you right now.
You.
I just want you to know I'm thinking about you. Okay, I'm leaving. Bye. And all I want in my life is for people to understand that I'm just thinking about them. But then, okay, I'm leaving. Bye. And just to be like, cool. Okay, bye.
Well, now they know.
Well, Drew, my friend Drew, I said it to today. He was like, he sent me a message. He said, hello. And I was like, yes, 9 a.m. tomorrow. I'll see you. We go for coffee every week, 9 a.m. And he was like, how are you doing? And I was like, just recording, like, you know, when that text where
but that's your problem too, is that you always respond.
Because if I don't, I forget. My brain is a sieve. So as long as if it hits the thing, it's like it hits the thing. And if I don't respond within 5 minutes, like 11 things have happened. I did it today. I almost didn't submit an audition because I was like, that's not this and thing and blah, 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 blah. And if I don't write it on my hand or my face or like any of these things, I forget. Well, my face, because I'm on computer. If I wrote it across my forehead, I'd be like, oh yeah, I got to call Krishna.
Oh.
So I don't know. I would love for us to find a way to audit those things, to sit back and be like, what's the relationship right now? And I don't know how everyone else is feeling out there. I imagine it's probably some kind of in between how you're feeling and how I'm feeling with a little bit of added extra other things. But I think that still works, you know, to sit back and go, okay, how do I want my relationships with my friends to be right now, just today? And today, I want those friends who understand when I say, okay, I'm leaving, bye. And I know I do it to you all the time. You'll send me something and some days I'm like, la, la, la. Yeah, sure, that's great. Smiling face. And sometimes I'll just write, okay. And you know that. and there's no
Yeah,
judgment.
it doesn't bother me.
You just, yeah. So how, you know, having this audit and saying, okay, what is my relationship like with my friends? And then not take that for granted. Because remember, and we've spoken about this, I think, in the past few episodes, you have a certain number of conscious decisions that you make and so many that are subconscious. So
Mm-hmm.
our relationships with the people that we love and the people that surround us are subconscious a lot of the time. Our behaviors are subconscious. And maybe there's something to be said for just in this moment when everything is up in the air, when you're moving and you're feeling particularly emotional, to just take those three things. I love that you made it just those three. Like, what is my relationship with my family right now? And what do I need it to be? And then what's one thing I can do to get it there? What are my relationships with my friends right now? What do I need them to be? And what's one thing that I can do to get them there? And then what is my relationship with my finances right now? What does it need to be? What's one thing?
Yeah.
Because that's all we've really got time for in the day. And
Well, and
if,
these are core things that can just send you spiraling. Like if your finances aren't in order, if you're stressing about money, money is so linked to adverse mental health
yeah,
effects. It's yeah, it's we're finding out more and more right now that money is the major stressor for most people in companies. A lot of times
mm-hmm,
that's even what's making people less able to function at work.
yeah,
So it's a big issue they're seeing in schools that like universities school that is the number one stressor. So instead of stressing about school
they're stressing
passing,
about them, how they're going to pay for it.
they're stressing about how they're going to pay for it
Yeah,
or how they're going to feed themselves while paying for it.
yeah, yeah,
So getting your finances in order is, I think, really, really important. And in your I think there's like a grace period. In your 20s, you're not really expected to have your finances in order.
what,
And your
and what is
20s
in
are,
order, you know,
I
just
think
know what they are.
it's in a place where you're not in a survival mode. That's how I would
Right.
think about it. There's survival mode. Like I think of your 20s, especially your young to mid
Mm-hmm.
20s, all about survival mode. It's raw emotions,
Mm-hmm.
it's big emotions, and it's a lot of firsts.
Mm-hmm.
You're just in reaction mode.
Yeah.
When you get into your later 20s and into your 30s, you're a little bit less reactive. You've learned those lessons. There might be
Mm-hmm.
points of time that are reactive, but then
Mm-hmm.
you can settle that baseline again. And I think that's the goal. You want to get to a point where you have a general baseline. You will always have peaks and valleys.
I love that. The
Yeah,
foundation.
you
We
want
talked
a
about that, didn't we?
foundation. Maybe.
Did in one of them.
Yeah. I think that's really, really important. And getting yourself to a point where if shit hits the fan, you feel like you're going to be okay.
Yeah. I
Or if or when. I mean, let's be real, it's a when. When shit
mm-hmm.
hits the fan. And whether that's um I mean the nice thing, what I really want, what I think a lot of people are gunning for is FU money. Money where they can stick to their values. If a company that they're working
Mm-hmm.
for isn't aligning with their values, if a
Yeah.
relationship isn't aligning with their values, like think about all of those things that if you're not financially in a place where you feel like yes, I can handle this for myself,
Mm-hmm.
um you may be stuck in a relationship that is past the expiry date. You
Yeah.
may be stuck in a job where they're not treating you well and not paying you well. um I
Yeah,
think
and
there's
I
a
want to
lot of
jump into that job
yeah.
thing because from a career pathway perspective, this is my opinion. I have told people multiple times that there are multiple paths to success, and a lot of people have the mentality, especially in the creative fields, of I need to give up everything and hustle in this thing and work my way up this ladder in this one specific field. And I want to encourage you all to think about that being a pretty debunked notion now, because we're in a gig-based
Yes.
economy. It's over. Like that's not necessarily the only way. It is a way, but it's not the only way. It's not moving up the ranks is not the same as it was, but a lot of people behave that way. And a lot of people who are lecturing, mentoring, championing, teaching in institutions can still, kind of purport that same vibe, right? But to the generations that are coming up and the creatives that are looking for work, I really want everyone to start thinking, and this is my job, this is what I spend a lot of my time thinking about, really getting clear on what your transferable skills are, and then taking those stepping stone jobs, because you might not be able to take that first job as a recording engineer in a massive studio, but you might be able to get a job in a music related company doing something that is a transferable skill, copywriting, doing social media, doing digital marketing. Those skills are required across all businesses. So instead of thinking them of things in a kind of vertical way, we've got to think more horizontally. We've got to think more outside of that top down methodology, and then understand the value of time. So if you are thinking about, I want this job to be amazing, your job doesn't have to be amazing. It doesn't have to define who you are. It doesn't have to be those things. It might be that job is the job that gets you out of debt, and you might not like that job. That job might be 8 hours a day of you being like, ugh, but after X amount of time, everything is doable if you know that it's finite. And if you can contextualize that, that's a Larryism. That's one of the things that Larry taught me a long time ago, because I was super stressed and I didn't love my job at a time. And he was like, is it allowing you to continue to audition in a way that you want to audition? And I was like, yes, it is. And he was like, what's the price of that freedom? Is that worth that freedom? And so if you're a family person and you want more free time, you might want to take that higher paying job and not like it for 8 hours of the day, so that you have the freedom to get yourself out of debt and more financial independence in a medium term situation. But make sure you define the term, because otherwise you get stuck and you get steeped in it.
Absolutely. And I love talking about transferable skills because nowadays you really do have to have an idea of so many different things. Businesses are built out of so many different facets now, and especially when you look at the digital world,
Oh,
it's just I don't really think it's good enough to just have one very specific niche all the way through. It's fine if you're later in your career already and you've found that niche, but no, I don't think it's enough anymore. I think you do need to know transferable skills. And even if you want to work yourself out of doing them, which is totally realistic, you need to be able to understand enough about this topic to work with other people who are doing it, to get them to make what you actually want. And I think you've actually talked about that on a podcast.
active succession planning. If you want a
It
better
is.
job, outgrow your job.
Yeah. Because otherwise how are you supposed to dictate what you want? How are you
Mm-hmm.
supposed to verbalize what you're looking for if you don't know the terminology that people in that department use? You
Mm-hmm.
have to be able to see that.
Yeah.
And I mean, for artists, for marketing, for anything that has some semblance of creativity, that's even tenfold, right? Because it's shifting so quickly.
Totally.
So I know in my field, um, analytics and coding is becoming one of the number one things, skill sets that you need, which was never how it was before. Before it was very much more creativity, arts based, but
Right.
you'd need it all now.
Well, and it's interesting that you say it. I want to look up, and I'll probably post in our resources a link to I believe it's the World Economic Forum article. I read a lot on continuous development, education,
Mm.
career pathways. That's a lot of my daily reading. And one of the interesting things was the World Economic Forum talks a lot about, preparing the future generations to go into, you know, into industries and what those industries might look like. Machine learning and artificial intelligence has been here for a long time, but I think the education system hasn't quite caught up. And there are a lot of reasons for that, but it is what it is. The other side of it is LinkedIn, I think, does an annual review of the top hireable skills. And those things change
Mm-hmm.
over the years. And if you look at the curve, it's an exponential growth in digitization, in introductions of new concepts, of new types of technology. We're being expected to digest information in an entirely different way without the educational, and I mean specifically pedagogical structures to help us to learn how to critically think. And to all of us who are in the beginning and the middle of our careers, we're in a real shit situation where no one's given us the framework. But like Donna says, and I love that one of the big things about Donna's article that I came away thinking about was, if you want to be great at what you do, you got to be a pro athlete. You have to
Mm-hmm.
understand that you have to be a pro athlete and sometimes the pioneer. And you have to take, that's not your fault, but it's certainly your responsibility if you want to be a success.
I love the term pro athlete, and I think the other term that I would throw in there is a forever learner. You
Yes.
have to constantly be building. You can't rest anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
Yeah.
moving way too fast.
You,
It'll just bypass you. So if you have those big goals, if you want to move up, I mean, yeah, you're gonna have to just dig in.
yeah. So, I mean, we're coming to the end of our brunch break, but I hope that gave everyone a bit of food for thought.
What are you guys working on? I want to know
Yeah.
what people are working on. What are you learning? What are people doing?
Yeah, I'd love to know how you're all pivoting right now, actually. That yeah, send us some messages, tell us what you're doing, tell us some things that are kind of helping you to fortify your pillars, fortify your
Oh,
three F's.
I love that.
And how are you fortifying right now? Because, sometimes you're just going to want a blanket fort. And other times you want to fortify in different ways, with steel and, knowledge and whatever it is. Netflix. I don't know. Um, you know, Sometimes you've got to build that safety. And right now, I think I would really love for you all to have a bit more of a feeling of safety. And maybe that's how I was feeling today. I was just feeling like I didn't have control. And I know that I don't have control over anything. It's just a perception, but I was really feeling like the victim of my life.
Or like you missed putting on your armor this morning.
Yeah.
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 I
And
think
that's
that's what
okay.
happens sometimes. Like when you get into such a busy time, and I've been feeling that. I think that's why I've been feeling really raw as well. Because the things that I do often that gives me that armor,
Mm,
I have not been doing. My armor is
yeah.
off.
Got to fortify. Yeah.
So,
All right, babes. Well, I hope you all had a good little listen. Nice sip and spill from your two friends.
yeah.
And we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening, bombshells. In order to continue to elevate, subscribe and don't forget to click that little bell so you can get notified every time we have a new badass brunch. Until next time, stay focused, fierce, and fabulous.